Like some of my female friends, I'll watch it and I'll be like, hey, this is a healthy relationship that you're in. You're going to destroy this man's life. Like I can see it coming
They
beforehand.
live for the drama.
Yeah,
they don't know how to be in a relationship without any kind of drama.
No, initially I would because I used to work in a strip club and I would see this over and over again. And then after a while, I started to come to the realization it's like this is why men a lot of times choose younger women, is because they haven't gone through as much PTSD.
They can train them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't really think it's that. I really don't think it's that. I think the whole grooming training thing is way overblown.
That's
I'm listening.
because you're a man.
Yeah, but I don't listen to you guys. So were you trained? I don't think you guys felt like you were trained by these men.
But you don't know you're being trained when you're doing it because you don't know any better beforehand because you're so young that you haven't been through it. So like you literally are going through it and you have no idea it's being done.
Yeah, but
I feel like that could depend on the guy though, because if the guy has done the work and has bettered himself to where he's actually ready to be in a relationship, somebody who's younger could still be vulnerable, fresh out of school, not actually had the hardships yet that somebody who's older could have gone through, to where we've gone through some fucked up relationships.
I got one. So there's still
example their innocence can still be intact, but that motherfucker, they could break their innocence, and then at their young age they could destroy him for the next people. But if the guy is already,
I'll tell you why. You know what? One or two words: Tinder swindler. Okay, those chicks in that were like well into their 30s when that was going down, and they took out multiple loans. Actually, there's only 3 in the documentary. There's several more that were a part of that. But again, it was that fantasy of this guy who was like a Mossad agent and was, had his own like private jet and flying to Belarus or whatever. And the very first girl who was on there, she was something like 34, 36 years old. And she thought her ship had come in. She just met the guy on Tinder. And within 45 minutes of meeting the guy on Tinder, she's on his private jet flying out to, Mykonos somewhere. Had no problem with it. And nobody stepped in and said, do you think you're going to die by going on this guy's plane? Nobody stepped in whatsoever because her girlfriends wanted to believe the same story she was believing, and they couldn't. But they wanted to live vicariously through her.
Yeah, he manipulated so many girls.
So that's like whenever I hear like Dr. Jordan Peterson talk about like, oh well, older women don't fall for that. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Go watch Tinder Swindler. You're absolutely not true.
Because I've also found this situation with older women where a guy will come up and what's it, lover boy, whatever it's called, where he'll pretend like he wants to be in a relationship, but he just wants to have sex. And so I've seen older women fall for that as well. So that's definitely, I definitely
he like romanticizes the situation,
for sure,
and then like sucks her in, especially if somebody's been through trauma. I mean, I'm older. I've been married twice. I've been engaged 5 times, so I've been through it. And like, if a older guy, especially now, comes along, there's certain things that I didn't get from my past relationships that I'm looking for. So if they hit those certain points in the beginning of our interaction, you're more apt to get connected to them faster and fall for it harder and faster.
Well, let me back this up a little bit too. That'll just sort of like give you the opposite side of this equation here. The girls that were part of the Tinder swindlers swindle, right? You got to remember that they were women who were waiting for that to happen. When they were in their 20s, when they were naive, they never had that experience with a guy like that who kind of swept them off their feet and then turned out to be really toxic and was the son of a bitch, right? And they had to go through that process when they were like, say, 23, 24, 25. Now they're 36. They've never experienced that. So are they still kind of naive? Yeah, but they still wanted to be swept off their feet by the Tinder swindler because they hadn't gone through that when they were in their 20s.
I feel like when people go through that, regardless, I don't think any person here doesn't want to be swept off their feet, regardless of how old you are.
That is sort of the problem. Like I've always been like brutally honest with every girl I've ever dated, and it's very clear to me when they're used to abuse.
You're such a romantic.
Yeah, when they're used to like there were girls that I met that are like super attractive, and like there's one girl I remember she lived here and she started dating this male stripper, and we all just thought it was kind of funny. She's having some fun with him. Then she moves to Australia with him, gets married to him. The day she has the baby, he's off cheating on her. She comes back to the States. We're sitting at El Dorado one time, and she's telling the story, and she's like crying. She's like, I can't believe he cheated on me. And we're all looking around at each other like, you married a fucking male stripper. Like, I don't understand. Like, not only was it so crazy to hear her not take accountability for her decision, I would never date this woman. Like, because in my mind, it's like, if I want to have a healthy communication with you, you are not capable of receiving it. And that's the problem. Do you understand? That's the issue. Like, I think that's the difference. And I do not agree with this idea that this is something that only happens when you're 21 and not when you're 31. No, if grooming is real, it happens all throughout your life because of the thing you just said, this necessity for this addiction to this belief of getting swept off your feet. When I watch my grandparents, you know what they were with each other? Fucking honest. Hey, guess what? We're going to have to stay together to get through the Great Depression. Sorry, this is what's going to have to happen, man. We're going to have romance all the time. We're going to go out and eat steak dinner. No, we have to survive the fucking Dust Bowl and the Spanish flu. That's how old my grandparents were, right? That's essentially what happened. And when I meet girls who can just deal with my level of honesty, we have a future together. Yeah. If it's a situation where I have to continually, I didn't love bomb you enough today. You didn't get enough love bomb attention. So I don't know what we're going to... Let me give you some more love bomb attention.
What's your love language?
Let me build up to the certain level of affirmation you need, and maybe we can make it through another 24-hour period before getting a fight. So you can see some women are capable of that and some aren't. And when I see that they aren't, I'm sorry, guys, what'll happen is, if I was a guy, I'm obviously in a happy relationship right now. If I was a guy who's single. If I was a guy who's single. I'm not single right now. But if I was single and I would met a girl like that, and it was just like she's sitting there going off, it's like, yeah, my ex was a narcissist. And my ex before him was a narcissist. And my ex before him was a narcissist. And my ex before him was a narcissist. I'm thinking of, I'm about to have a great time, probably give you mind-blowing sex, and there's no chance we're going to be in a relationship. They can't have all fucking been narcissists. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's essentially what happens. And so that's one of the biggest mistakes. And the other mistake is this, right? And this is super offensive when I say this to people. The guy who owns this studio, John Orlando, love the guy, right? Look at him like he's a mentor. But John and I disagree on this one idea. And that is the idea that body count doesn't matter. And the studies are conclusive. They're in, the data is in, the data is done. The more men that a woman has been with before she gets married, the more likely she is to file for divorce, and the more likely she is to cheat. In fact, it is the single most highly correlated thing to cheating is how many previous sexual partners she had. So if I say I would like to be with a woman who has has fewer previous sexual partners, that is just something that lessens the likelihood of me getting cheated on or from somebody leaving me. It doesn't mean every time that's the case. And if a guy comes to me and he goes, hey, I married a girl who had been with 100 guys and she used to do porn, and we've been together for 10 years and I'm very happily married to her, I'd be like, dude, congratulations. But it's still an anomaly. It's still the exception. Right. It is still not the rule. So that's the issue. And here's the double standard. Ready? Everybody's going to get super mad at me because I don't think men should cheat. But when men have had a bunch of sexual partners before they get married, are they more likely to file for divorce? No, because men aren't filing for divorce, period. It's 80% of divorces that are being filed are filed by women. And so that's the issue. It's not the same thing. It doesn't end up being the same thing. When you see whether or not men or women are happy in a relationship, as men, they start off as virgins, they're pretty happy, and then it drops off, and then it sort of flattens out. For women, it drops off, and it just keeps dropping. As the more sexual partners they had before they got married, the less happy they are in a relationship. Because a lot of times you're happy. Again, if you've been deployed overseas for 15 months, or if you've been in prison for 10 years, the first girl you meet is flawless because you don't have the decision of choice. Bro. She's the one. She's the one. Now I want you to consider your ancestors. Just go back to the 1950s or the 1850s. Go back to that period of time. Dunbar's number. There's a anthropologist named Dunbar, and he came up with this idea that humans basically lived in groups of 150 people. So if you lived in a group of 150 people, there's maybe 7 or 8 people you could possibly mate with, and you just wanted the best one of those 7 or 8. Now I have Instagram. Now I want the best one of the 7 or 8 billion that I'm going to choose from, and my brain can't deal with this option, all these options. And so what happens is I stare at this option and this option and this option.
Yeah, but realistically, you don't really have all those options. You think you do.
Perception. You have more options than you did 200 years ago.
Yeah, I have more options. So first of all, I have more
Yeah.
options than I did 200 years ago, number one. And number two, I'm a bad example because I have had a lot of options that other women have had.
Not you personally,
yes,
guys in general.
but I will tell you from this standpoint, like, because again, we were at Bilzerian's house on Sunday, and he has more options than all of us combined. And in his situation, that wasn't the key to happiness. But it's like he even talked about this because we had a guy ask a question on our call. He goes, "What do you do to reset the dopamine hit? Like, what do you do where you get to the point where you have so much opulence that like you can't even enjoy like a $4,000 dinner taste average to you?" Like flying on a private jet, you completely take for granted. What do you want to do? Dan said this one time in an interview. I thought it was very telling. He goes, once I become a billionaire, I'm going to shave my beard and I'm going to go become a stalker at some at Walmart or someplace like that, like a nighttime stalker, and just like work for a living and just
in
like
a van by
just
the
like
river.
live it like literally like just kind of suffer for a little while so that I can appreciate my life again.
Brings you back to like baseline.
Well, it's not just that. Your ancestors lived shitty lives, well, shitty compared to us, where they were living hand to mouth over and over again. They were in a survival scenario. They weren't comparing themselves to other people. They just needed to feed their family, protect their tribe from predators, and protect their tribe from other human beings trying to come kill them. the women. That's essentially what they were doing. And so they didn't have time to feel depressed. And their choice, they had a choice of maybe 8 or 9 women that they were ever going to have sex with, which is also why men have approach anxiety when they approach women, because men had very few women to choose from and in their small tribe. And if they screwed up and they tripped and fell or sounded dumb and all the 8 women like, that guy's a weirdo, your genetics were unapologetically weeded out of existence. Does that make sense? That's the reason why. Because you don't want to have sex. You don't want to screw up the first time you approach a woman. Women had the opposite problem. So men had the problem of commission. Women had, of omission, and women had the problem of commission. If they accidentally had sex with the wrong man, especially when we're talking about ancestral times during the Pleistocene epoch.
Even if it was the right man.
Even if the right man. If the right man and the right man died, you and your children would die. Imagine if you are like, this is the reason why women are so like keen on, is this an alpha male? Is this the guy I want to be with? And is this the guy who's going to stay with me? Because if you had sex with the wrong person during ancestral times, you die. And your children die. You fucked the wrong guy and you die. You don't end up with your name all over Twitter getting embarrassed. You die. You actually perish and starve. That's what happens because you're ostracized from the tribe because you the wrong dude. That's the problem. And this is the reason why women are so much more picky than men when it comes to sexual partners. And I'm glad that women are picky, because if women weren't picky, we'd all be living in caves. That's what would be happening. There's men have been, for the last 50,000 years, men have been trying to compete and compete with other men to impress women, to have access to more women.
Got a question.
That is the reason why.